FM, part of the IOM radio network.
IPMNation.com.
Today in this world, more terrorist attacks, more ISIS, more war, more inevitable bad foreign policy decisions, and the ugly truth behind it all that so few people like to acknowledge, but I think deep down so many of us know is true. It is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2016, 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio. Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed is on the air, and we are live on this Tuesday evening, coming to you as we do from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, broadcasting worldwide. Of course, we're 5 nights a week on IPM Nation 2, and Tuesday and Thursday nights we have the honor and privilege of also being on OTR FM, the premium channel on the OMTimes radio network. As I make a couple of adjustments. Oh, that sounds better. Making a couple of adjustments here. It's funny. Sometimes I'll think I have everything exactly the way I want it right before we go on the air, and then we get on the air, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, I can make that better. So live radio, everyone, unless you're someone who listens to the podcast edition of the show. Of course, let's see. Big show tomorrow. If you're listening live on Tuesday night, then tomorrow being Wednesday, on the television edition of Unleashed, which is every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation TV, is the television edition of Unleashed. Wow, brain's a little scrambled. I'm gonna pull it together here mentally. I'm just tired. Things have been very, very busy lately. But this week on the television edition, my guest will be Jim Rubens. He is a Republican running for the Senate. He intends to challenge Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire for the nomination to become to run for Senate against whoever the Democrats put up, which is probably going to be our current governor in New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan, who is a sociopath, by the way. But Jim Rubens, I like him a lot. He came on the show a couple years ago when he was running for office. He's a former state senator, but he does aspire to higher office. And I like Jim very much, and I have endorsed him. Some of you may be thinking, Matt, that's odd. He's a Republican. You're an independent. And I do regard myself as an independent, and I do fight against the two-party system. And I'm actually... Technically, I'm registered as a Democrat, but that's really just for ballot access reasons. For example, being a registered Democrat allowed me to very proudly vote for Vermin Supreme in the primary. So, who came in fourth for the Democrats in New Hampshire, by the way. So, and he's been on the show. So, but no, Jim Rubens is the kind of Republican that I really like. In that I think it's safe to say he's very moderate, and you can tell he's a moderate Republican because when I've talked to other Republicans about him, Republicans who don't like him will usually sneer something like, "Well, he's a rhino, he's a liberal," because it's the Republican Party is such that if you don't take the extreme far right position on absolutely everything, you're labeled a rhino or a liberal. There is no room for independent thought. But Jim Rubens, definitely not a conservative in my view. I would describe him as a moderate / libertarian style Republican. He definitely has some libertarian in him. But the big thing about him that I think a lot of Republicans just really, the ones who dismiss him as being a liberal or a rhino or whatever, the big thing, which sadly will probably disqualify him from ever actually attaining the nomination that he seeks. He is, you ready for this? Because most of you probably didn't think this actually existed. He is a Republican who believes in climate change. Yes, it's true. Jim Rubin's a Republican who actually believes the science and believes in climate change. That right there makes him kind of an outcast within the Republican Party. Personally, I believe in climate change, so I like that about him. Yes, I do. I believe in climate change. I know that most Republicans think that it's all a big scam and that it's, I don't know, some sort of conspiracy between the climatologists of the world and liberals to destroy capitalism or something. Because obviously, who are you going to believe? A bunch of climatologists who actually study this, or a bunch of politicians who get their money from big coal and big oil? Well, obviously the politicians, they know what they're talking about. So anyway, but Jim Rubins does believe in climate change, and that right there makes me like him, because a Republican who believes in science is a rare and wonderful thing. Republicans who believe in science and unicorns, those are two rare and wonderful things. So no, but in all seriousness, I dig that about him, and he has the balls to say it, that he believes in climate change. So I look forward to having him on the television edition this week. Speaking of the television edition, last week's, I know I mentioned this last night on the show, but Monday nights were only on IPM Nation. So those of you who listen to us strictly on OTR FM didn't hear me say this, but last week on the television edition of Unleashed, we had what has turned out to be the most viewed episode of the show so far. My guest was Mike Gill, who is the host of a program called State of Corruption, which we do carry on IPM Nation 1 Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And he is a very controversial and polarizing figure. And John Hopwood and I interviewed him last week on the show. He'd been on with Gary and I on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, another political show that I do a couple of times, actually. But I think this was his first time on Unleashed. And so that was quite a show, and that's causing a lot of stir. We've had a few. Vermin Supreme, of course, was as I mentioned, he was a guest on the television edition right before the New Hampshire primary, and about a year ago we had Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live on the show. That was also a very heavily viewed edition. Ian himself, even much more so than a year ago, a very polarizing and controversial figure. So if you're not checking out the television edition, if you only listen to the audio version of the show, I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you're listening, and I thank you for your patronage. But you're definitely missing out on something if you don't check out the television edition. And we have them all up on YouTube and on Vimeo on our IPM Nation channel on each of those sites. YouTube has everything. I think Vimeo has most of it. So all you got to do, if you're on the IPM Nation website, click the YouTube link in the upper right, and it'll get you there. So let's see. Also, Monday of next week, and this will be exclusively on IPM Nation 2, my guest will be joining me via telephone from Chicago, Brian Browdy, who or Brody, I should say. Brody. He I don't know where I got Browdy. He like I said, I'm tired. He will be joining me. He is the host of the Brian Brody Show, the tagline of which is "Because the self-help bubble is about to burst." And that's a new show that's debuting on IPM Nation 1 beginning April 1st. And no, it's not an April Fool's prank. It really is starting April 1st, and which is a Friday. And then from there, it will be weekdays, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. on weekday mornings, and really looking forward to talking with Brian. We'll get to know him a little bit better, and that's going to be a great show. He's a really interesting guy. So there's a lot going on. What we'll do is we've already got a break coming up, but when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what happened today, and the truth. There's an ugly truth to all this terrorism, but it's not what you think. What some of you who aren't familiar with the show, who are new to the show, it's not what you might think I'm going to say, because I know a lot of people, they use that type of phraseology when talking about this stuff, and then you've got all these conservative talk show hosts who then use that to launch into this rhetoric about Islam, and they try to present this narrative that all Islam is bad and all this, and that's absolutely not where I'm going with this. But I'm not a conservative talk show host. I'm kind of all over the place in some ways. I'm more of a libertarian than anything. But no, the ugly truth is that we create our own problems. It's what Ron Paul calls blowback, and I think that the evidence with each attack continues to mount that he is correct about that, and we are going about this all wrong. So when we come back, I'm going to play some audio of him explaining that himself from just a couple of months ago. And I'll also take your calls if you'd like to opine on anything tonight, 617-917-4IPM. That's IPM as in IPM Nation, 617-917-4476. You can call or text. And also feel free to use the chat room at IPMNation.com/live2. You can tweet at me, at Matt Connarton. You can post on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And we'll be right back. Quick break. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on this Tuesday evening. Coming to you on IPM Nation 2, as we are 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, it's Tuesday, which means we're also on OTR FM, the premium channel, on the OMTimes radio network, as we are on Thursday nights as well. So hello to everybody listening on OTR. And, again, don't forget the television edition of Unleashed every Wednesday, live at 2 p.m. You can watch that on IPM Nation. And then we do get not the podcast, but we get it up on demand on YouTube, typically by about 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday night. And like I said, my guest this week is Senate candidate Republican Jim Rubens. And before we went to break, I was talking about, I mentioned some audio. this is actually from back in December. This is Ron Paul speaking on a program on the Fox Business Network about Obama's handling or lack thereof of the terrorist threat. And, Ron Paul's thing, basically, and, he talked about it a lot, and he got some boos at some of the debates when he ran for president a couple times. He talked about the concept of blowback, and he's written about it extensively, which basically says we create our own problems in the Middle East. And so much of what we encounter in terms of terrorism and so forth is simply a reaction to our presence there and our actions there. And we need to stop arming our enemies, which his son, Senator Rand Paul, while running for president, said, we need to stop arming people who are ultimately going to use those weapons to turn around and fight us. It is no secret that ISIS is largely using weapons that we gave to the the former Iraqi army. This is what goes on, and it's just crazy, and it's completely intentional. It's to continue to fuel and propel forward the military-industrial complex. We are a war-based economy. It's our greatest export. And, and none of this will change. The reason America continues to fall for it is they've manipulated us wonderfully using this sort of subtle nationalism and jingoism, and they've made sure that we are in such a psychological state where we continue to feel threatened and we continue to feel this fear, not only for ourselves, but for our allies. And we can never do what the correct thing to do. The correct thing to do would be to pull back and stop meddling in the Middle East and stop giving these people such a reason to hate us. But we can never do that. We will never do that because the psychology of the country is such that once you begin to do that, people feel as though we've surrendered, as though we've given in somehow. So we just keep fighting and fighting this nebulous war on terror, which can never be won, will never be defeated. There will always be terrorists. How do you fight people who aren't afraid to die and, in fact, actually want to die because then they're martyred and then they go to heaven and get their virgins and whatnot? So it's just ridiculous, but it's intentional. It's not that these people are stupid and don't know what they're doing in terms of our foreign policy. They do know what they're doing. They're making sure that we're in a state of perpetual, endless war. That is the idea because people profit from war. Look at Halliburton. There was a lot made of that when we invaded Iraq. And, we know Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and these people profited directly from our horrific foreign policy. When we invaded Iraq and it started to go south very quickly. I mean, the invasion itself went great, quick and smooth, but the occupation began to really crumble very rapidly. And at the time, I thought, well, they were just arrogant. They thought it was going to be easy. Now I look back and say, no, well, they were arrogant. That part's true, but it's not that they thought it was going to be easy. This was intentional. They knew we were going to get bogged down there. That was the idea. Just like with Afghanistan. We're bogged down. I used to think this was conspiracy theory talk, but I now absolutely believe there is some validity to it. Our troops appear to be still in Afghanistan after all this time for a specific reason. They're guarding those poppy fields because that's Afghanistan's greatest export is drugs, ultimately. And meanwhile, we have this heroin epidemic. I don't think these things are a coincidence. So, it's pretty easy to connect the dots on this stuff. It's all about industry. It's all about money. When you enlist in the United States military, I would not at this point encourage anyone to do so, frankly, because, you enlist under the guise of this idea that you're fighting for your country. You're fighting for America. You're really not. You're enlisting to fight for the government, which is not the same thing. When I think of what is America, what is the country, what is our nation, that's the people. You're not fighting for the people. You're not fighting to protect the people. It's all BS. You're fighting for the government and the government's agenda. and the military-industrial complex and this war-based economy. That's what you're really fighting for. Don't join the U.S. military. I would discourage anyone who's considering it. Don't do it. Look, there was that story recently. We treat our veterans so poorly. There was that story recently that was, I mean, it's just shocking and yet predictable. That the suicide hotline that the Veterans Administration set up. They set up a suicide hotline for veterans who were thinking about harming themselves. And then it went to a voicemail. There was nobody answering the phone. It went to a voicemail that it turned out no one knew how to actually access. And then we found out there's already at least one confirmed case of a suicidal vet who called the hotline, left a voicemail, didn't get a call back, and ended up killing himself. Don't join the military. America will love you for it. Americans love and respect our military. The nation will love you. The people who actually make up the nation will love you for it. But the government, which is what you're really fighting for, couldn't care less about you. They are perfectly willing to let you die. They will use you as irresponsibly as possible. And then when you come home and you need help, they'll let you die. If you're feeling suicidal, they have no problem allowing you to just leave a voicemail on a suicide hotline that no one will ever hear, and then you can go ahead and put a gun in your mouth and blow your brains out, and they don't care. Please, any young person who is hearing this, I'm sorry if this sounds horrifically unpatriotic, and I'm sure any veterans listening to this show have already turned it off by now, but I implore you, do not join the United States military. You're not fighting for this country if you do so. There is no such idea. You are fighting for the government, and the government is evil. And the government doesn't care about you at all. And any caring that they pretend to show is strictly to make everyone else feel good. Feel good about all these people who go and fight for our country and fight for our freedom. It's all crap. You're fighting for their agenda. You are fighting for their business. To keep their business running, to keep the military-industrial complex running, and to kill civilians with drones, and all the other evil, horrible things that we do. And I got rambling, and we already don't have enough time in this segment to actually play the clip. So maybe we'll hold the clip I was going to play for the next segment, but. No, I mean, when I heard that story about the suicide hotline that went to a voicemail that no one knew the password to access, that was where I just thought, okay, that is it. If anyone ever says to me, "Hey, Matt, I'm thinking about joining the military. What do you think?" I'm going to do my best. Whereas at one time I might have said, well, that's a big decision. Think very carefully about it. Do you really want to risk being sent off to war, and our foreign policy sucks and whatnot? But no, in the future, if anyone ever says to me, if any young person says to me, Matt, I'm thinking about joining, not that any young person is going to ask me my advice, but if hypothetically, if that were to happen, like if we had an intern here at IPM or something who asked me, Matt, what do you think? I'm thinking about joining the Marines or joining the Army. What do you think? Do you think I should do it? I would say absolutely not. Unless you desperately need the money and can't find a job and it's your only way, because financial motivations is why a lot of people join. I would say absolutely not. Please don't. Please don't. Because they're going to brainwash you, or they already have, or just this general nationalist, jingoistic mindset that we have in this country has already brainwashed you into believing that you're going to go and fight for our country and fight for freedom and fight for America. And you're not. You're not. They don't care about you. And to them, you're just a machine. You're a cog in the wheel to continue to help to continue to make the war profiteers even richer than they already are. You're a means to an end, because none of these people, obviously, are going to, the war profiteers aren't going to strap on a weapon and go fight themselves, right? Why should they? They have you to do it. It's all a big scam. and I'm sorry to any veterans hearing me say this who I may have offended, because I love and respect our veterans. I've said a million times, I'll say it in front of the world, I'll say it publicly, I don't care. Not on my best day do I have the balls to strap on a weapon and go running into a place where people are actively trying to kill me, okay? So I have enormous love and respect for our veterans. My dad's a veteran. He was a Navy SEAL. He served in Vietnam. So please don't anyone misunderstand what I'm saying as a lack of respect. But I will tell you this. Again, I mean no disrespect. I promise you I don't. It breaks my heart to say this. But you were duped. Because they made you believe that you were fighting for our country, that you were fighting for freedom. The truth is, you were fighting to preserve a corrupt corporation that has no compunction, whether it's our current foreign policy debacles, whether it was Vietnam or Korea or whatever. A corrupt corporation that has no compunction about sending thousands of people to their death just for the sake of the preservation of the corporation. So that's the truth. And on that happy note, we gotta take a break. We're halfway done. Don't go away. More to come.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live. I'm going to play that clip for you now, as promised, that ran out of time in the last segment. This is, as I was saying, this is Ron Paul, and this is from a few months ago, but it's very relevant today. Someone is calling. Actually, let's take this call.
Call
Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's on the line?
As in,
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Okay, that didn't go well. That happened before, too. That must have been Dave Ridley, because this only happens when he calls. Dave, if you're listening, call the other number. That was probably you calling before, and I didn't realize it. I thought I had you in my phone. Please call back. But call the secret hotline number that you have if it was you. Looking to see if I have a Facebook message from him. Sorry, everybody. I feel badly because someone was trying to call and it didn't work. I hate when that, like I said, it only seems to happen when Dave Ridley calls. That's why I think it might have been him. But I don't see a Facebook message from him. Because usually what will happen is he'll message me on Facebook and say, hey, trying to call you. Nope. I don't see any messages from him. Okay. So I will go ahead and play this clip of Ron Paul, and then we'll come back and discuss. Here it is.
Former GOP presidential candidate Dr. Ron Paul is with me now. Dr. Paul, thank you for the time. The president is struggling to reassure the public that he has the right approach to fighting terrorism, and by many measures is failing to do so. What is the most important step he can make now for the year ahead, and what is the most important step to fight terrorism for the new president?
Well, I think the most important step should, and advice on that should be directed at both Republicans and Democrats, because terrorism is a very serious problem, and many of us have been predicting and warning about this, but nobody asks about motives. Every time there's a murder in this country, what's the motive, what's the motive? Nobody asks about the motive, and the motive has to do with our foreign policy. So if anybody cares and worried about terrorism, if they don't address the subject of an interventionist foreign policy where we invade foreign lands, where we kill a lot of people, and we throw our weight around and we become the policemen of the world.
Everybody, sorry to interrupt the clip, but I'm trying to call back our caller.
hello?
Hey, is this Dave?
Hey, Matt.
Dave, it's I apologize. We had a good streak going there where you called that one time and we didn't have a problem. And then this time you call and it doesn't work. And I thought that must be Dave Ridley calling because this only happens when Dave calls. How are you, sir?
Oh, good. Are you on the air?
Oh, yes.
I couldn't find your stream. I found a website that was still up, but I couldn't actually listen live. So I was mainly just calling to see if you're still on the air.
Oh, yeah. Although that makes me want to check and see if the stream is working.
A lot of clicking, but that doesn't mean I clicked clicking, but that doesn't
it looks like it's
clicking, but that doesn't
it looks like it's yeah, it looks like it's up. It looks like it's yeah, it looks like it's up. I can hear it on the headphones. Yeah, it looks like it's up. I can hear.
Since I couldn't tell what you're talking about, I should probably find out.
Well, I was talking about what happened today in Brussels and Ron Paul and how his theories on blowback and how essentially I agree with him. Earlier, I was talking about how I don't think anyone should be encouraged to join the United States military because you're not really fighting for your country. If you do, you're fighting for a corporation that doesn't care about you. And but we can talk about whatever you want. I mean, there's been I did see the video that you had posted the other day about what happened at the FTL studios.
Well, it's so funny. I didn't actually film any of that. A lot of people thought I did. But, I think it might be maybe the reason people thought I filmed it was because Nick Ryder, the guy that did film it, was he was kind of laid back, and calm in the way that he interacted with the authorities, and that's kind of unusual among activists. And I like to think it's something that I do, and maybe that's what got him confused with me. I don't know.
That very well could be because it had that because I saw the video and it had that Dave Ridley kind of vibe. So sounds like maybe you've got a protege.
Well, I've never trained him, but he's like a professional videographer.
Oh, okay.
And he's been a New Hampshire Liberty activist at least since 2008, I think. But I hadn't heard much about him or from him in the last 3 or 4 years. So this is one of the things that went right. This event sort of reactivated him.
Yeah, that's good. So what do you think? Any thoughts on this whole thing? I mean, I haven't seen any new news about it today, but I know the LRN.FM stream is back up successfully and is running all of the regular programming, which is good because IPM Nation, we draw some of that too, some of the shows that we share. But I mean, where do you think this is headed? Do you think they'll ever get their equipment back from the FBI?
Well, maybe after it's obsolete.
Yeah.
I heard they took like about 70 pieces of equipment or something like that, 70 pieces of electronic equipment roughly. So it's really, and again, that's another one of the things that went right is how fast FDL was able to get back on the air. In fact, they were never off the air in the sense that they didn't miss any nights, that they were scheduled to be on the air. LRN was down briefly, but that's different, and I don't think it counts near as much as FDL. Right.
Yeah. I was very impressed because when the news first broke, here we were thinking that they weren't even going to be on that night, and they pulled it together quick.
Yeah, in a conflict, you don't have to win outright to win, right? Like the British didn't really win the Battle of Britain; they just didn't lose, right? And the defenders of Sarajevo didn't win; they just kept fighting, right, until it was over. So it's just a matter of being resilient in some form or fashion. And a lot of stuff has not gone right in this crisis, but that part, at least, there has been some degree of resilience shown, and that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you? We haven't talked in a while. It's been a while since you've called in. What have you been up to in terms of your encounters with folks? I mean, obviously the New Hampshire primary has come and gone, so there's not as many opportunities to kind of walk up to these people and record them as far as presidential candidates. But any other particularly exciting video encounters you've had with politicians or other public officials?
Well, they're exciting when you see them on the channel, and so that it's just kind of repetitive for me to go over. Yeah. But there is a big backlog of videos right now that I've got in the can that I've shot over the last couple of months. And they're sort of trickling out. I think at this point the most the real confrontations have all been aired. Until I shoot the next one.
Right.
But what I've got in the can right now is a lot of stuff. It's not time sensitive. There's a lot of cop stuff actually, though. It's just not confrontational. Well, kind of confrontational, but it's actually weird. It's kind of me doing all the confrontation, and the cops just kind of being laid back about it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's good to see. I mean, that's the kind of problem I want to have.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there was a slew of cops at the State House the last time I was there, which was about a week ago. It was just cop after cop after cop after law enforcer after fish and game after law enforcer, and I questioned all of them. And actually, some of them reacted really well. They were very polite and everything. And it's interesting how each time I go to the State House, it seems like there's more people who know who I am. Like, I guess there's this major congressional candidate that I was looking for, and he found me before I found him, right?
Oh, wow.
He introduced himself to me, and that was nice. And he knew who I was, and a lot of different people knew who I was, and introduced themselves to me, and some people thanked me for being there, and like state reps. So it was kind of nice. I'm starting to feel more like the establishment.
Yeah, but it's cool though that that some of these people seek you out and appreciate you being there. I mean, that's obviously you're doing something right. And yeah. I mean, you'll never be part of the establishment. I mean, not as long as you're I mean, because what you do is you're not approaching this with a particular agenda. somebody's corporate agenda, which is what.
Yes, I am.
Well, but not a corporate mainstream sort of agenda. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's a fringe agenda, but no, it's just an idea. All the people and all the complicated positions and stuff like that, and the bills that people like and don't like. Forget about that. It's just about orbiting an idea, right? It's the idea that people should not initiate harmful force or fraud against others. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't even worry too much about any details or any complications or distractions. It's just that, right? So I can go into any situation and not feel like I have to do a bunch of research to know where I stand. So there's definitely that agenda, but that's it, and that's pure. So I think instinctively some people are kind of drawn to that, even if they don't like libertarians, supposedly. They can accept this sort of simple idea, or they instinctively understand that there's a process of just orbiting that idea as opposed to a more sinister agenda.
Right. Well, Dave, we're almost out of time on this segment. But before I let you go, I want to make this public promise to you. I'm going to make sure that the number that you call from is in the phone so that I see your name when you call the hotline, so I know it's you, and I don't hesitate to pick up, because for some reason we always have an issue. Well, except for that one time. That one time we had no issues, but and then I'm bummed. It's like, oh no, I blew that call. But thank you as always for being patient with our incompetence with answering the phone here. I do appreciate it. I mean that very much so. And I would encourage everyone to check out the Ridley Report on YouTube. So thank you so much, Dave.
I encourage people to just be more active in reaction to this FBI thing.
Absolutely. All right, Dave Ridley, thanks so much, man. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, bye-bye. All right, everybody, we'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. Thank you again to Dave Ridley for calling in. And I'm going to play that clip in its entirety in a moment. I just started it over, but I wanted to get that call because I felt I always like hearing from Dave. We haven't heard from Dave Ridley of the Ridley Report in a while. So, by the way, though, before I play this, just showed up on my phone for those listening live. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have won the Arizona primary. That was today. That has been called for Trump and Hillary. No particular big surprise there. All right, this is Ron Paul on Fox Business.
Dr. Ron Paul is with me now. Dr. Paul, thank you for the time. The president is struggling to reassure the public that he has the right approach to fighting terrorism, and by many measures is failing to do so. What is the most important step he can make now for the year ahead, and what is the most important step to fight terrorism for the new president?
Well, I think the most important step should, and advice on that should be directed at both Republicans and Democrats, because terrorism is a very serious problem. And many of us have been predicting and warning about this, but nobody asks about motives. Every time there's a murder in this country, what's the motive? What's the motive? Nobody asks about the motive, and the motive has to do with our foreign policy. So if anybody cares and worried about terrorism, if they don't address the subject of an interventionist foreign policy where we invade foreign lands, where we kill a lot of people, and we throw our weight around and we become the policemen of the world, you will never understand and you will never stop the terrorism, because what has been the response so far in these last few weeks? An incident happens and everybody can't wait how many people they're going to bomb. Not saying, well, maybe that will have a backfire to us. Maybe there's blowback from this. They never ask that. Nobody does. And unless they do, believe me, there's going to be a lot more terrorist attacks against us.
So, Dr. Paul, I want to ask you about something that your son, obviously, on this issue is debating, in particular with Senator Marco Rubio, this idea of price of fighting terrorism. That is to say, should we be concerned about the dollars spent, or are all dollars spent up front always fewer than the ones that are spent in defensive reaction?
Well, I think the whole idea of a military budget versus a defense budget is what they have to address. Most people equate anything that is in the DOD, the Department of Defense, is okay, but most of the money is militarism, and that's a negative that drains the funds from here, and that's why we have a dwindling middle class and our economy is not booming, because we put trillions of dollars into this flawed foreign policy. But if you have a defense expenditure, what you do is you spend less money, but you defend this country, and you don't waste it getting involved in Syria, Iraq. Look at all we've done in Syria and Afghanistan, and all we have done is push all these individuals over into the arms of the Iranians. And we've been helpful in doing that, and we're draining our resources. It isn't just a few billion or 100 billion. We're talking about several trillions of dollars that have been spent in the last 14 years, with a lot of American lives lost, and also 4 million Muslims have been killed that we just totally ignore. They don't exist, and it doesn't matter, even though our foreign policy was a major contributing factor to the chaos in the Middle East.
Dr. Paul, I like what you said about the distinction between military spending and defense spending. I'm not kidding, but no candidate has spoken clearly enough about that. Speaking of which, obviously your experience shines through. I mean, you ran for president 3 times. We want to play for people who have not seen it yet. Your son went after Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio in this ad.
Alwan and Hamadi were welcomed into America by the federal government, given public housing and public assistance as refugees. Here, they attempted to send heavy arms to Al-Qaeda and plotted an attack on an army captain in America. And yet, some refuse to learn from mistakes.
We have welcomed refugees, the tired, huddled masses for centuries. That's been the history of the United States. We should continue to do so.
Well, we've always been a country that's been willing to accept people who have been displaced, and I would be open to that.
But Rand Paul sounded the alarm.
So this evening on the debate stage, obviously fighting terrorism and essentially addressing the refugee crisis is probably going to come up a lot. What is the best way for the U.S. to manage all the refugees who want to come here?
Well, you can't just say open borders, anybody come, because it's a tremendous financial subsidy. Because in the old days, people came, many of our grandparents, others, they came, but they came on their own. They paid a fee to come in, and they went through a process. But today, if you take in 10,000 Syrian refugees, or anybody, and there are more than Syrian refugees, a lot of them are from, Africa and the different countries, there's a lot of money being spent. So no tax money should ever be spent, subsidizing immigration and migrants coming in. But you once again have to see, how did this problem come about? It came about because chaos in these areas is a consequence of wars that we have provoked and stimulated and perpetuate, and they've been going on now in the Middle East for 14 years. So this is natural. This is why Europe is being overrun. It'll end. It's going to end because of the financial crisis on our doorstep. The Europeans can't afford it. We're not going to be able to afford it, and our economy is not nearly as strong as Wall Street thinks it is, and we won't be able to afford this. But it leads to so much hostility and hatred, and then you have people stirring the pot that it's a religious thing. We have to turn on and say, well, it's Islam. We have a war against Islam. Well, I see it differently. I think that we should have war against violence, and we should be honest with ourselves when we participate. And now that we have this philosophy of preemptive war, which was given to us by George Bush, I think that is so dangerous, so immoral, so unconstitutional. So that says a president without proper authority can initiate war. That means we admit we're the aggressors, and nobody really asks any questions about it.
Dr. Paul, please come back. We would like to hear more of your questions. We would like to continue the dialogue. Dr. Ron Paul joining us there.
Appreciate it.
So there you have it. Ron Paul from, like I said, it's from a couple of months ago, but it'll always be relevant because we're always going to be in this situation. But applying some common sense and truth and logic to it. Now, of course, the one thing he doesn't quite say is that we're not, at least I don't believe, and I don't know if he thinks, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't know if he thinks this or not, but, obviously we behave very stupidly in terms of our foreign policy, but I think it's a willful stupidity. I think it's all by design. I don't think we're just stupid for the sake of being stupid. I think I think it's a mass manipulation to keep the war machine going. And that's why. Because here's the thing that I always come back to is, so you look at, I'll take any number of situations. Take the invasion of Iraq. I thought it was a terrible idea. I thought it was going to be a disaster invading Iraq. Now, did the Bush administration, were they just that incompetent and stupid on such a magnificent level that all these people like Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld and all Condoleezza Rice, all these people with all their knowledge and experience, how is it that with everything that they know, all their experience, their knowledge, their wisdom, their insight, everything that they know, how is it that they managed to get us into such an awful, just no-win situation? And yet someone like me, with no experience in foreign policy, I've never served in government, I've never been in the military, I've never been Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense or any of these things. How is it that me, unqualified me, could look at that and say, wow, what a terrible idea this is? How is it that I knew something that they didn't? Me, with zero experience in any of this, and yet I was somehow smarter in my thinking about this than they were. Well, I don't think that's possible, to be quite frank. I mean, I think I'm a reasonably smart guy, but I'm no genius. I don't think that I and a lot of other people who also opposed the invasion of Iraq somehow had some unusual, almost supernatural insight into how this was going to go that the people in the Bush administration, who in theory should know what they're doing, didn't have. No, that just doesn't seem likely to me. So I think they knew. I think they knew exactly what was going to happen. I think one thing I'll give Donald Trump for credit for, and I don't compliment him very much, I'm very critical of him, but I thought it was great during that debate. I think it was the one in South Carolina when he went after Jeb, and he was talking about Jeb's brother, W, and saying, look, he lied. And Trump said it as bluntly as you possibly can. He lied. He knew there were no weapons of mass destruction, and he lied. He got us into war based on a lie. Because if you're a Republican, you're not supposed to say that. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of Republicans who seem to kind of will acknowledge that George W. Bush was a terrible president. But they still try to somewhat adhere to Reagan's 11th commandment, which is thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. So most Republicans, while some obviously aren't wildly enthusiastic about W, I'd never heard a Republican until Trump, and the irony being, I don't think Trump is a real Republican, but I'd never heard a Republican say directly before, either publicly or privately, that W lied. But they did. They lied to us. We all know it. Many of us don't want to admit it, but I think deep down, all of us know it. They lied. They misled us. And it was all by design. It was all intentional. And they got what they wanted. They got us bogged down in Iraq, which continues to fuel the war machine. They got us bogged down in Afghanistan, which, again, I think has another nefarious purpose. I mean, like I said, our military seems to be, what are we doing there? Guarding poppy fields. Why? To make sure, just to make sure their economy doesn't crumble, because that's their primary export. I don't know. But now we're out of time. So don't forget tomorrow, the television edition of Unleashed. My guest is Republican candidate Jim Rubens, candidate for Senate. And if you don't get to see it live, we'll have it up on YouTube by 9 p.m. And we'll run the audio for you at 11 p.m. in this slot on IPM Nation 2. And, of course, I'll be back Thursday night with another live edition of the radio edition of Unleashed on IPM Nation 2 and OTR FM. So I will talk at you then. Meanwhile, we are out of time. Good night, everybody.